Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this. What I really wanted to talk to you, it's something I had prepared for last week, is about a very important subject to us, which is death. So I want to speak to you about the meaning of death for the Sufis. You heard many times that the people have said, pray as if it was the last time. You have heard from the Sufis expressions such as, die before you die. And then you know the hadith of Rasulullah, where he said, remember often that which cuts your pleasures, meaning death. Remember death. So we know all that. But then this is a subject that is often abandoned, left, because it's not, the modern culture is not correct to speak about these things, especially in Europe and in America. These things, if you start talking about death, it's not. You have to cut it off quickly, because it makes people sad. So a good way to enter into this subject from the point of tasawwuf is actually entering from our own culture, and perhaps the best expression, the best way of understanding this is again through Martin Heidegger. I often quote Martin Heidegger is the last philosopher, is the philosopher who spoke about the end of philosophy, and therefore is the most important of all the philosophers since Plato to him. And among the many things he says, and we have recalled some of his ideas, like for example, I think it's particularly important, that one that says science doesn't think. He has another one of great value and quite extraordinary for a philosopher that is trying to get out of it. And this is an expression he has called, forgive me for those who speak German, I will pronounce it very badly, Sein zum Tod, which means being towards death. And this expression towards death is very important in this philosophy. Remember that why would, in a circle of dhikr, we will speak about Martin Heidegger, who is not, clearly, he was not a Muslim. Is he got anything to add to what we know? Well, he certainly has nothing to add to Islam, because if he knew anything about it, he would have become a Muslim. But he has something very important to say about kufr, because he is a person who said kufr, is a covering up, and he speaks particularly about the language and the culture in which we are living in. So it's very important that we understand kufr. He's not going to tell us about Islam, but he's going to tell us about kufr, things that they are very important. Particularly, he's very particularly conscious about language. And this way of thinking, this Western way of thinking, which is now not Western anymore, it's just global. There's only one way of thinking. It has become fashionable throughout the world. He has a lot to say about this. So anyway, one of his key expressions is this zum Tod, towards death. Now, he doesn't mean by that the coming of people towards the clinical death, as if everybody is going to factually die, but he speaks about it as a possibility, an integral possibility of being, that something that is connected to you all the time, inseparable, that your dying is inevitable, that is not an event disconnected from you as if it's going to happen one day. No, it is with you from the beginning, it's attached to you. And what Heidegger is trying to say is that if you do not understand that this is not a factual reality, it's not an empirical reality, it is not something that it happens to somebody else, but it's something that it happens to you and it will inevitably be part of you, is part of your understanding of the world from the very beginning. In modern language, we refer to this matter always in a fugitive manner. We try to avoid the subject, and we try to relate to it in terms of being disconnecting from ourselves. It's always referred to somebody else, as if death doesn't have ownership. It doesn't belong to anybody. And what Heidegger is trying to say is to say, look, this way of speaking hides the very truth about death, which is part of ourselves, that we are in a finite, limited time. And he says, without understanding of this towards death, which is not the event at the end of your life, but is the fact, it's something that ongoes, stays with you. Without this understanding, you cannot have understanding. And he refers to it with the word authenticity. To have authenticity, you have to be two-handed, to dead, to Tode. You have to be in the being of knowing, being aware of death. Only with being towards death, you can have access to the truth. Without understanding of this, you cannot reach the truth. Because only in that state you can reach this, the capacity to be able to uncover up. Truth in the sense of aletheia, of uncovering up. Okay, all this is the difficult language of Heidegger. It's very clear if you understand this word, because what he's saying is that if you do not think, if you don't understand death, if you don't understand that you are towards death, that is imminent to you, anytime, that is part of us from the very beginning, if we cannot understand that, then we cannot understand ourselves. And the condition in order to unveil is to understand who we are. Death is fundamental to understand who we are. Death is not something that you try to avoid. It's precisely the opposite. It is that that gives meaning to your life. It's through that that you can understand who you are. And unveiling takes place in the process of understanding death. It's the very opposite. So in other words, negating death to present it as something that happens to others, but it doesn't belong to you until it happens. It's a fact. But no, it's not a fact at the end of life. It is. It's a foundational aspect of yourself. And that is unveiling. So with tasawwuf, you can read Heidegger like this. Without it, still, the people who read Heidegger, they still find it obscure. It's too difficult to understand. It's not difficult to understand. Very easy to understand Heidegger. So you can see that this is a subject that modern culture has negated completely. And in the ways of Heidegger, following the way he expresses himself, it is impossible to reach authenticity without understanding death, towards death. Not just death, but your being. That is the innermost possibility of yourself. That you cannot refer to death as something that happens to others, but is something that is part of you. And then he speaks about something like, he doesn't use the expression man, he uses the expression Dasein, meaning is the individuality, is the being there, that something that each one of us is and only ourselves are. So trying to deny this generic term man as they self, you know, the self that, of others, as if it was something completely generic. But the fact that it's individually yours, so it's the same with death. Something that belongs to you and nobody else. So you can see that there is an issue here about death. There's something important. Now, the Sufis speak about this matter very often. And one of the things that is known to us is that one of the vicars of the Sahaba, it was death, maut, death. What is it about death that is important? Let's go back now to those expressions that they are so common and we hear it very often among the Sufis. And what do they really mean? When we say, die before you die. What is the meaning of that? Well, what is SHAYKH UMAR trying to give us when he speaks like this? Now let's go back to the purpose of Tasawwuf. What is Tasawwuf about? It's to learn about Allah, it's Marifatullah. And this is the basis of all the knowledge. Is the mother of all the knowledge. From here springs everything else. So if the seeking of the Sufi is Marifatullah, and having this dhikr, this understanding of death is part of it, so it means that the essence of this dhikr is knowledge of Allah. Now we are coming a little bit closer to this. But the Sufis say, how do you reach Marifatullah? This is not something you read in a book, is it? You can read in a book, you have Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. You can read it. And I've sat down with many Arabs who can pronounce it a lot better than me. But I know that they have never been broken by it. That they have never broke down. They have never had tears with it. That they have never affected them. That it has never entered into them. But they just simply say it. It comes through their mouth, it doesn't go into their heart. So what makes the people understand this? Not just knowing that in this knowledge there is a depth that goes on and goes on and goes on. Taqwa. Look, if everybody understands that you have to fear Allah, I mean, more or less, it will understand the concept. Okay, yes, no, of course, I have to. Taqwa is important in the deen, and we have to fear Allah. But then, how does it relate to your affairs? And how you to teach this thing, such a critical matter? How do you teach other people? Would you ask them to come and read it? No, we just said from books. It doesn't come from books. So where does it come from? It comes from people. It's contagious. It's passed on from the eyes, the Sufis say. It comes from the eyes. And somebody who's got it, you pick it up and you take it with you. And then it grows in you and you become greedy with it and you get more of it and you get intoxicated with it. And then it's nothing else that matters in your life except this. And then secretly you come on your own. And then you get, and you say, I want more of this. And then you go in Shasta, you get more. And you surrender and grow into it. And this is the journey that nobody else knows. But it's your journey. Because you got the seed of it. And now you can go and journey with it. You see, this is the beauty of this affair. For those who know, you know what I'm talking about. And you see, and then you have love of Allah. And it's the same. I mean, you can say to people, you have to love Allah. And many people come to me and they say, oh, Sheikh, I want to love Allah, but I don't know how. They want it, but they just know, they don't know how to articulate it, they don't know how to put it together. I mean, everybody knows love. Everybody has been in love sometime. But they cannot relate to something that they cannot touch or hold or measure. So how do you teach this? Something which is critical to everything that we do. And we know that what made the Sahaba such an extraordinary event in human history, what made them so special, is that they have a love for Rasulullah which was exceptional. And they have a love of Allah that it was beyond anything conceivable now. They had love of Him. They surrendered to Him. My Shaykh used to say, what made the people of Medina different is not that they followed the Sharia, but they wanted to follow the Sharia. That they wanted to follow the Sharia. So when you want to teach somebody about Sharia, you just don't teach them the Sharia. You want to teach them how to want the Sharia. You have to touch their hearts. I just came from a few months back from Kazakhstan. It's a new country, and in this country, who came out of communism, they just discovered Islam. It's all new. And there was a little bit of traces, particularly the tariqas, because the Soviet Union spies, the KGB guys, they couldn't penetrate into the tariqas because, you know, in the circle, the Sheikh will see the heart, and he will see who is who. So they couldn't ever penetrate. They came into the tariqah and they knew, the Sheikh knew immediately he was an spy. And so they came into Islam in a way, and of course the Wahhabis, they just jumped in, and tons of people started coming, and the parents, without knowing about what all this thing was about, they kept sending the children to Medina University and other Wahhabi establishments, and they came back, and of course they came back haram, 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 haram. And everything was haram and bitter. And at first they said, wow, you know, there must be wrong. And also, in a society such as theirs, there are so many things that they are wrong. So in fact, they were right most of the times. This is haram, this is haram, this is haram, this is haram. But after 20 years, the government has thrown them all out. They have lost every position. They have lost every place in society. Everybody hates them. Because you cannot go on like this, pointing the finger to somebody else. We did in Kazakhstan more than they have done in 20 years, in 5 visits. Because we didn't go to judge them. We judge ourselves. We went there to help and to serve, and to tell them what is possible and what can be done. And they recognize us and they welcome us. And we did the impossible. In a complete secular government, we got permission to mint the dinar and the dirham. We got the mufti who is going to speaking as we go on, to establish the dinar and the dirham to pay zakat. But we didn't judge them. We didn't go there to say, you are wrong on this and this and that. We said, we are wrong. Help us. You have the possibility to help us. We cannot mint the coin anywhere else. Please help us. I remember many times I was presented to people, and Gary can tell you the stories. And somebody told me, please don't speak with this man, he's totally secular. Completely secular, this man. And I would go, and I will, of course, I cannot not say it. So I was started with the Nebaballah, and I went on all the time. And we were discussing about some aspects of Muamalat, and when the meeting finished, the man didn't ask me, we were talking about markets, how development is done in the way of Muamalat. The markets are public institutions that cannot be privatized. And the market, the caravans, and all that development of Muamalat. And I was telling him all this. And when the meeting finished, he said, could you please tell me more about the things you said about the heart?
Yeah.